Hi, Mel.
Hi, Saria. How are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm good. We are back
We are back to talk about Trust Part 3 on Take Your Cue.
from PeopleQ. Whoop, whoop.
Whoop, whoop.
We're going to bring a bit of joy into it as well.
I always have to have a bit of fun, right?
Of course. That's when you do your best work.
That's it. Couldn't agree with you more. So we've talked about trust a few times now because it is such a big topic. We've talked about how to cultivate it. We've talked about a trusting mindset and what that might look and feel like with a team that has high trust. But today we wanted to talk about how do you learn to trust yourself. And if you're anything like me, and I'm going to be a bit vulnerable here, I struggled when I was emerging in my leadership journey. I really struggled with that, having that inner confidence rather. And I found it really hard to trust myself and give myself I guess the opportunity to be more of who I was. And so often when I look back on my journey, there are probably some pivotal moments in time where I think that if I had trusted my gut and my intuition, I probably would have made different choices, potentially better choices. But of course, I'm not going to dwell on the past. We all make mistakes. It's all part of the journey. But I think this is something that our viewers and our community and those watching will be able to relate to, because I think a lot of women in particular also as leaders grapple with imposter syndrome, don't they, Mel?
Look, I'm going to demystify that myth, and I think it's everyone. In my experience, it's not just women. A lot of people struggle with this concept of whether you want to call it imposter syndrome or doubting yourself or not trusting yourself. We all have elements of it at different points in time. And Saria, I'm going to share with you that I've had a lot of it. It comes and goes. It's almost like it's like a wave that comes through me, and I have these moments of I stop trusting myself, and I notice what happens to me when I'm in that mode. And it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of courage to really talk to yourself to shift that mindset. Obviously, an executive coach helps, which we've spoken about that before. But you think about the outcomes of when you trust yourself. Yes, there's confidence there. You feel more connected. You're taking more risks. You're in the arena. You're playing in the field. You're having open and transparent conversations. You're not holding back. You're being more vulnerable. There isn't that element of shame, so to speak. When you don't trust yourself, you almost go into yourself. You hold back. Your confidence drops off. You start questioning everything you do. And so I think it's important from a leadership perspective, when we talk about trust, we recognise that there is this element, this component of knowing when you're in this high or low trust with yourself. And I think there's pros and cons to each as well. So, for example, I'm going to share a pro when you might be in low trust. Sometimes I see it as a bit of an order on yourself. It's kind of like a check-in. You know what? I don't trust myself in this moment. Let me just check to make sure that everything I'm doing is aligned. There's good intentions there. I've got the right people involved. It's the right decision. I'm making the right move. And then at the other end, when there's too much trust, one of the, I guess, cons for me is, where does humility fit in that? Because I really think it's important to have this element of humility in knowing that it's not just about you, it's about the others and the collective.
It's almost walking a fine tightrope, isn't it? Like it's finding that nice balance between trusting yourself and having enough confidence, but then not being too overly confident and presumptuous.
Yeah. And you're right, it is that balance. And that's why I described it for me. It's like a wave, I'm in and out. But now I've got you. So now I've got someone that I can open up the conversation to, and you can be my check-in. So I guess for me, if we want to share a tip with our audience, I think this is where self-awareness comes into play. And it's important to build in reflection time and to create a heightened level of self-awareness. And if you want to do that well, there are so many ways that you can do it, but you want to have other people involved because you need feedback. You need external feedback, not just to be in your head with your thoughts. So journal and talk to others.
What about it? So for me, Mel, I'm trying to think back. Obviously, there's been numerous occasions where I've felt that self-doubt creep in. And for me, it's actually, my tip is to have compassion and practice self-compassion as well. Yeah, and I think it ties in nicely with your self-reflection. So, I mean, we're always our biggest critic, and I've been told that a lot through a lot of my previous managers. Really hard on myself constantly.
Yes, you
are. And I think to practice self-compassion, it is practice, because you're not always that great at it at the start. Take my word for it. But I think with practice, you'd be a friend to yourself. I certainly wouldn't say some of the harsh things that I say to myself in my head to my best friend or someone that said, you know what, I really didn't, do that quite right. Or, I probably shouldn't have made that decision. And I would never, ever say what I say to myself to that person. So I think, making sure that your internal dialogue with yourself is positive and that you are compassionate to yourself, that you give yourself a bit of a break. Like no one is perfect 100% of the time,
No, we're not.
That's okay.
Yeah, I love that. That resonates with me so much. And it's one of the things that I've learnt to do. I've learnt through self-awareness that when I'm low in trust with myself, I'm procrastinating. And so as soon as I see that behaviour, I, try to be compassionate and I have that, positive self-talk that you're talking about. But Saria, this is such a big topic again, and maybe we'll bring our community back for our next Take Your Cue from PeopleQ and talk a little bit more about imposter syndrome.
Sounds good, Mel. See you then.